Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the class BMN 521 seminar in Buddhist terminology. Today, the date is February 27, 2023. And this is the first session after the midterm. So I hope everyone is doing great. And so we finish our midterm and then we keep on moving. We have another 2 or 3 sessions. And today we are going to talk about the terminology, Buddhist terminology in basic Buddhist teachings. When I say basic or primary or cardinal Buddhist teachings, fundamental Buddhist teachings, I think you have an idea. So Buddhism finds its terminology and all that, all other things based on the culture in which it arose, which is Indian culture. So the analogies and things like that, similes and metaphors and all those things are related with the culture. So when we translate the texts of Buddhism into English or any other language, the challenge, as I told you before too, challenge is how to grasp, how to grab the real meaning of those things. So we discussed that in over the last 2 centuries. Translators, they were able to form strategies or terminology to convey the meaning in the original text. So when we say basic primary Buddhist teachings, there are many such teachings. You have learned in other classes that Buddhism talks about impermanence. See the word I am using, impermanence. The original Pali term is anicca. Anicca, now we translate it as impermanence. That is one of the basic teachings of Buddhism. So Buddhism teaches that everything in this world is impermanent, anicca. And also the second thing is that Buddhism teaches if everything is anicca, if everything is impermanent, the next thing is that everything is suffering. The word suffering, it has been used by many people to identify one of the basic Buddhist teachings, which is dukkha. Dukkha is usually originally translated as suffering. That is a very old translation. The word is not that old, but the translation, the word suffering is, the word dukkha is translated in English as suffering. But some scholars and some people don't like that translation. Because when you say suffering, it suggests that physical suffering. So nowadays, scholars tend to translate, they frame a new term for suffering, for dukkha. It's dissatisfaction. See the difference now. Originally, it was translated as suffering, and now, over the years, over some decades now, the term has evolved. The term has changed. To grasp the original meaning of the word dukkha, now we use the word dissatisfaction. So in the future, I think it will become the standard terminology for suffering, for dukkha. So you see what I'm saying here? Originally, the word was translated as suffering, and now the trend is to translate it as the dukkha as dissatisfaction. So what do you feel when someone says life is suffering, or when someone says life is full of dissatisfaction? Do you get the same meaning? You have to ask yourself, life is suffering and life is full of dissatisfaction. I'm dissatisfied. I'm suffering. Does it the same thing? You have to ask yourself. But in Buddhism, the word is dukkha. Because everything is changing, impermanent, everything is changing, everything is suffering, everything is dissatisfaction, right? When everything changes, we do not have the satisfaction as we wish, right? When someone passes away, or when someone grows old, become feeble, life is suffering, life is dissatisfied. That idea is there. So when you choose terms to convey the original meaning, it has to be really, really doing justice to the original meaning. We have to find justified terms, standard terms. So suffering is also, even today, it's accepted, but the new trend is to translate it as dissatisfaction. And then the third one, there are 3 characteristics of life. That's one of the basic Buddhist teachings. So 3 characteristics of life. First one is anicca, impermanence. Second one is dissatisfaction or suffering. And the third one is anatta. Very difficult term to translate. So usual translation is no self, not self or no self. There isn't something called unchanging self. So it's translated as no self. So these are usual terminology that we use in recognizing one of the fundamental Buddhist teachings. And then there is another one called 4 Noble Truths. Chattari Arya Satchan in Pali. So we translate it as 4 Noble Truths. No Arya Satcha, Noble Truths. See, this is how the translation goes. And then the Noble Eightfold Path. Noble Eightfold Path. Arya Attangika Magga in Pali. Arya Attangika Magga. Arya means noble. Attangika means eightfold, consisting of 8 limbs. Marga, magga, path. So noble eightfold path, something like that. And then another very basic, primary, very important, fundamental Buddhist teaching is dependent origination. What is dependent origination? Dependent origination is in Pali, paticca samuppada. Paticca samuppada, translated as dependent origination. Everything in this world is dependent on something else. Nothing exists of its own. I depend on, I am here depending on many other things. Food, air, water, all those things. Relationships, the sum total of those things is me. So I am dependent on something else, many other things. Likewise, a tree, a flower, or whatever, is dependent on many other things. So this is called dependent origination. Why does Buddhism talk about dependent origination? Because it talks about dissatisfaction, right? Suffering. Why is it suffering? How come it arises? When you are going to explain those things, suffering does not come alone. It does not arise alone. It is dependent on something else, right? In that way, in this world, you can always go back to find out the cause and effect. See, that is also one of the better way of translating paticca samuppada, or dependent origin, cause and effect. Always there is a cause. Cause means C-A-U-S-E, okay? Cause, and then there is effect. The floor is wet. Why is it wet? Because it rained. The cause of rain is cause of wetness on the floor is dependent on the rain. Cause and effect, right? Life is suffering because it is impermanent. Likewise, in anything in this world, you can find out the cause and effect. The relationship between the cause and the effect is called dependent origination. So that is also one of the basic fundamental Buddhist teachings. That one, and then there are, these are the very, very fundamental basic teachings. So in order to translate those things, and then again, very important thing is human personality is, according to Buddhism, as I told you, nothing there is nothing called self. But I'm here. So then who am I? If there is no self, who am I? Buddhism goes on to explain this as I am a result of a combination of 5 forces, 5 things. It's called Panchaskandha, 5 bundles of things, 5 heaps. Skandha means heaps. 5 heaps together appear as me, appear as you. So those 5 things are rupa. Rupa is form, physical form, material form. Vedana, feelings. There is no me, there is no you without feelings. Feelings are there, right? Vedana, Sanya. Sanya means perceptions, right? I perceive things. If you cannot perceive certain things, then there are no you. Perceptions and formations, volitional formations. Mentally, you form, you create things. That's sankhara. And the last one, consciousness. Consciousness, awareness. All these 5 bundles, 4 mental, right? Consciousness, mental formations, perceptions, feelings. They are not physical. They are mental or psychological. And the form, material form, is the only physical. So mind and matter, huh? That based on these things, the bundles are operating together. These 5 bundles, these 5 heaps are operating together to give the feeling that you are there. That's one of the fundamental Buddhist teachings. So the translation, I think these translations are really, really good, grasping the original meaning. So I'm just giving you an example to show that even though the technical terms in Buddhism, like if you say rupa, it's a technical term, but when you translate it, you don't find a particular technical term for that in English. But now, since we have been using those terms, form, physical form, has become the standard translation. So form, formation, no, not formation, form, physical form, rupa. And then feelings, perceptions, mental formations. We are creating things in our mind, sankhara, and then consciousness. One of the difficulties that translators find is the word sankhara in Buddhism has many different meanings. There are many different meanings in that particular word. So it's very difficult to get the meaning without the context. When the word sankhara is used in different contexts, different meanings, different ideas are intended. So in these 5 bundles, Panchakanda, the sankhara is mental formations. But in other places, sometimes you use the same word to identify everything in this world is also called sankhara. So then 2 different meanings, right? Everything in this world, trees, tables, lights, everything, both mental and physical. Everything is categorized in one word as sankhara in early Buddhism. So the translation then has to be, you have to find a different term for that thing to convey that meaning. Everything in this world, can you give a word for that? Usually the translators use the word phenomena. Phenomenon is singular, phenomena is plural. So everything in this world is identified as phenomena. So every phenomena, sankhara, is changing. Everything changing, like the sankhara is changing. Everything in this world is changing. So likewise, depending on the context, the very same word convey different meanings. So the translator, when you are looking for standard, accurate terms, very careful. We have to be very careful. So you have to follow the standard way. Likewise, in many other places, you see the same thing. So in conveying the fundamental teachings of Buddhism, translating the fundamental terms in Buddhism, over the last century or so, translators have come up with the terminology, right? So you should be able to think of those terms and but for that thing, you have to know the Buddhist teaching first. If you understand the Buddhist teaching, then you can say whether this translation is right or wrong. As I told you, suffering, the word suffering, dukkha. If you have understood the word dukkha, you know that the meaning, the context and everything, and then you should be able to figure out which term is the best, which terminology is the best to convey the original meaning. So in that way, when you are dealing with the fundamental Buddhist teachings, it has to be very, you have to be very careful. You have to follow the existing methodology. Okay. So now you have to do a little research on basic Buddhist teachings and their translations. When I say Buddhist teachings, actually Buddhist terms, not the teaching. Teaching is a very big area. Basic Buddhist terms and the equivalent English terminology to grasp those teachings, to understand those teachings, concepts. That is our lesson today, and I wind up with that thing. You have to think over this thing and do little research and try to find as many as possible terminology for early Buddhist teachings, early Buddhist concepts. And that'll be it for today. Thank you very much. And as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Have a nice week. Thank you.